College Football Nerds here talking top 10 for week 8. It's going to be a short video, y'all. Just going to let you know. We're going front to back. Clemson number 1 for me. And Josh, tell me who you got number 1.
I got Clemson. Only complete team in the country. Alabama, maybe they get there at the end of the year. They're not there now. Defense is still shaky.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion about will Alabama jump Clemson? And I think there's a fair discussion there to say, look, Clemson number 1 is still hypothetical because they still haven't played anybody. And so if Clemson's still number 1 after Alabama has a big win over the number 3 team, why is Alabama not number 1? Because we at least know they can beat the third best team. The issue is what you just said. Clemson is complete. Alabama still is not there. We did a review, y'all, if you want to watch it, of Alabama, Georgia, and how we think that sorry, I'm a little distracted. It's game 7. This is going on, and I'm expecting us to lose. But anyway, what we said was, look, Alabama stepped up, improved defensively here. They were out without some key players in the first half, some for the whole game. They have a ceiling that they haven't hit yet. They could be a complete team by the end of the year. They're not there yet. They're my number 2 team. Do you have Alabama number 2?
I do, and I agree with you. I think they could end the season as good or better than Clemson. And I would have no problem ranking them ahead of Clemson on the have you earned it test if I'm the playoff committee. But in our rankings, which is how have you done against your schedule, how would someone else have done against your schedule, I think Clemson would have also beaten Georgia by some similar or better margin, frankly, because the difference is I think Clemson could shut down Georgia's offense almost entirely and win by as much or more.
Yeah, I don't think Clemson has as good of an offense as Alabama, but if the two played today, Clemson could exploit some things that would give Alabama defensively a lot of trouble. I've got Georgia number 3. They're not getting punished in this list for losing. We talk about this all the time. Just because you're not better than number 2 doesn't mean you drop to number 10. That's ridiculous. Pollsters do it all the time. That's crazy. But it's especially crazy this year because I don't know who you rank ahead of Georgia, given that I don't know that anybody else in the top 10. And a reminder, y'all, we're not doing Big Ten teams yet. We'll do them next week. Just hold on. That's partly why this is so crazy. I don't know who you would put ahead of them. I mean, we've seen A&M beat Florida. We've seen A&M play Alabama. Oklahoma State would not beat Georgia. The rest of the teams are question marks. So I've made a very compelling case for Georgia number 3. Tell me why you have Georgia number 3.
It's all the same thing. I mean, I don't think anybody else would have done any better than against Alabama other than Clemson. And I don't know that I'd pick anyone to beat Georgia. Yeah, they've got a loss. Again, we don't really care. I don't think Notre Dame would beat Alabama right now.
No,
I certainly don't think they would have.
Louisville.
Right, especially given the way last week went. So, that's where I'm at with it. And people were writing us for not having North Carolina rated higher because they were undefeated. I mean, we looked at their schedule. We kept breaking down the fact that they had a couple close wins against not great teams. And I know Virginia Tech has had some good wins. Virginia Tech was horribly depleted against North Carolina on their roster. I don't think Virginia Tech is that good. And it bears out. I mean, early in the season, it's really hard to stay with an elite team, period. And I don't think Georgia's the only team that can do that.
Yeah, and I don't want to, I mean, I'm not going to brag too much about us dunking on people for not having North Carolina in our top 5. I think one of us or both of us left them out of our top 10. We take victory laps sometimes. That this is so weird. I don't really care that North Carolina was number 5 last week. They weren't in ours. We knew better. My number 4 is 3 teams. Texas A&M, because they beat Florida, but they also got blown out by Alabama. Florida and Oklahoma State. And I say that to just show how ridiculous a top 10 is at this point because there are not 10 good teams right now. And this is where I'm going to stop. I'm not going to give you 10 teams. I'm going to give you these 3 at number 4 with the caveat that by the end of the year, at least 2 of those teams aren't going to be in the top 20. So tell me who you got at number 4.
I have 4 teams at number 4. I have Texas A&M, Florida, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma State. And I don't think we knew that the other one was doing how many teams at 4. We just both kind of agreed we couldn't do 10. And we both know this is kind of the gap. We feel like maybe one of these teams, I'm throwing Notre Dame in there. I think last week may have been a bit of a fluke.
2
They've
weeks
had some,
now. 2 weeks
yeah.
now.
Well, they had issues where they had limited practice time and stuff. I mean, they've gotten thrown really had a wrench thrown in their machinery. Oklahoma State, I can buy that maybe they're really pretty good. I'm a little skeptical on it. They didn't play Baylor. I don't know. A&M and Florida, I think, are pretty good teams. Florida's offense is really good. The defense is not. Texas A&M is more complete, but the offense is shaky. And I stop. I mean, after this, and then you can go ahead and add the rest of my top 10. And this is just what I sent Daniel. I have no idea who you put after them. I mean, there's a considerable argument for Auburn. Maybe there's an argument for Miami, who I don't think has looked very good. You could make an argument for North Carolina after them because and these are all teams that I think are deeply flawed, but it's hard to say that any of them is less flawed than another. Um, I have no idea. I mean, there are teams not again like Auburn is not a top 25 team, and they just lost to South Carolina, and I can conceivably see them someone like North Carolina having the same record with their schedule. I could see Arkansas being a top 10 team, even though I don't think they're very good in terms of talent. I could see Arkansas being a top 10 team, or at least they are almost deserving of it, just based off the teams they've beaten to this point. It is I don't think I can ever remember feeling like it is such a mash from 5 to 30 where the sixth best team in the country, I absolutely could see losing to the 30th best team in the country tomorrow. There is no separation there, mostly because the amount of inconsistency week to week is phenomenal right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people right now are going to say this is where you put in the G5 teams. This is where you put in the Cincinnati and the BYU. But the assumption there is that those teams also aren't suffering from whatever crazy has infected the rest of everybody. And that infection is COVID, obviously, is really just thrown a wrench into everything. But look, I mean, I got in an argument with somebody on Twitter, of course I did, because they were pumping BYU, and my line was, your big win is a 7-pointer over UTSA, or you're saying that's a good win, and the week before they lost to UAB. And they're like, yeah, you don't have, these are scrappy teams. Well, then they lost by 2 touchdowns to Army this weekend. So BYU has played less than nobody. 2018 Clemson schedule makes BYU's look like, BYU's schedule makes that schedule look really good. It's been bad, and they've still had some struggles. BYU is not a top 10 team. And this is going to get into a playoff discussion where we use all these teams being muddled together as an excuse to say one that hasn't played any of them is better than them. And that is patently false. That is not the way to go. BYU, if you don't play anybody and you want to be in the playoffs, you should kill everybody. Same thing Cincinnati. You should kill everybody. And they're not doing that. So I'm okay if you want to make an argument for a G5 somewhere in here, but they're not playoff caliber. So, I mean, what's the point? And once Big Ten teams get in the fold, are we going to say that BYU is better than Penn State? Of course not.
Yeah, and I think there's a more of an argument with BYU because they have some dominant scores on the board. But like, if you don't know, BYU was losing in the fourth quarter to Houston, and Houston just that game got completely out of control for Houston, and then the score ran away from them late. But BYU was not in get control of that game until the very, very end of it. And like you said, the trick is when you play UT San Antonio, you can win by 7 and sneak it out. If they were playing, even a South Carolina, they lose that game, and they're benefiting from the fact that they don't play anybody. And like you said, if they win every game 50-10, you're going to hear our tune change. But so far, we've only played 3 or 4 games. They haven't been doing that. And I personally don't think they're even going to. But that's why they're not in our top 10s.
So I don't think there's much more to discuss. It's frustrating for us that so many teams are playing poorly, and this includes for me Notre Dame. I don't look, we want to give them the benefit of the doubt looking ugly against Florida State and coming back and putting some points on in the second half. But we're giving them that benefit of the doubt by putting them at number 4 and saying, okay, if we had the playoffs today, you'd be in the playoffs. I can't do that. That's why they're not even in mine. I haven't seen Ohio State play, and I guarantee you Ohio State's 2 touchdowns plus better than Notre Dame. So I'm really excited for all these other teams to get in the mix so we can have a proper top 10. Any other parting shots on this before we wrap it up?
Just that I'm excited to see what the Big Ten looks like. And if you're a Big Ten fan, we're going to be fair to you. We're going to quickly put you where we think you would be. But for the first few weeks, you should expect Big Ten teams are going to be lower because I guarantee you they're going to be behind where their counterparts are in other conferences just due to the lack of games played. And we're going to move them up as their quality of play. Like, we're going to move them up based off where you are that week versus the other teams that week. So I'm not going to give like Ohio State necessarily credit because it's week 1. I still think they'll be a top 4 team, but I'm sure there'll be some glitches. And same with like Minnesota or Michigan or Penn State. As those glitches get ironed out, then you're going to climb and move your way up to whatever slot you are, assuming those glitches exist.
All right, y'all. Give us your, if you can, top 10 in the comments, and you can tell us where we're wrong and how we are missing the obvious on something. I'm sure it's going to be Cincinnati fans. But give us your top 10 or top 4 or top whatever, and let's regroup next week when we have more teams that are actually playing decent football. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. Go Braves. God bless.